The movie begins in Miami Beach, where Dan Forrester and a group of soldiers descend from the sky into a devastated landscape. They land in a pool alongside other people who are also falling. We then flashback 28 years to December 2022. Dan, a biology teacher, lives with his wife Emmy and daughter Murray. During a Christmas party, Dan anxiously awaits news about a job at a research institute. Unfortunately, he receives a phone call informing him that someone else has been chosen for the position. As he returns inside to watch the World Cup with his family, an unexpected event occurs. A wormhole opens up in the arena, and soldiers from the future emerge, leaving the bewildered crowd in shock. Lieutenant Hart, a female soldier, addresses the crowd and reveals that in 30 years, humanity will face complete annihilation due to a devastating alien invasion. The desperate plan is to recruit as many people as possible to travel to the future and prevent the extinction of humanity. A year has passed since the initial announcement, and the draft has led to riots and anti-war protests. The casualties have been high, and hope for the future is fading rapidly. Even Dan's students struggle to focus on their work, as they believe that everyone is destined to die anyway. Dan receives a call to report for the draft. After undergoing evaluation, he discovers that he meets the criteria because he has already died between the present and the time leading up to the invasion. A device is placed on his arm to facilitate time jumping.
This device facilitates.
It is also revealed that Dan served as a squad leader in Iraq 15 years ago. Given 24 hours to settle his affairs, Dan goes to Emmy's workplace. Emmy is a therapist for people who have returned from the draft. She informs Dan that there is one person who can help ensure the safety of their family, Dan's estranged father, James. Dan harbors resentment towards James for abandoning him and his mother long ago. He visits James, who has chosen to live off the grid and distrusts the government. Before Dan can ask for help, James states that he has never wanted to help him, which angers Dan. He always wanted his father's assistance, but James believes he would have only made things worse for Dan and his mother.
You never wanted my help.
Dan returns home to Emmy and Murray, having to break the news that he has been drafted. Both Emmy and Murray are heartbroken, and they share a tearful goodbye with Dan.
I love you, Chief.
Of the man who cries through every cold.
Dan arrives at the draft and meets fellow draftees, including Charlie, Dorian, Nora, and Cowan. They are briefed on the process of time jumping and the mission ahead. Charlie explains that they send people who have died before the war to avoid creating a paradox. Dorian shares that he jumped back after killing one of the alien creatures known as white spikes. With no time for preparation, the draftees are instructed to pass through the jump link into the future, specifically Miami Beach. However, a miscalculation causes them to be dropped from a higher altitude than planned, resulting in some falling to their deaths. Dan and the remaining survivors land in the water. After regrouping, they report to Romeo's command, led by the colonel. She informs them that the military has initiated a bombardment to eradicate all life forms in the area. The team is tasked with rescuing lab personnel before the bombs are deployed. Entering the facility, they find the lab crew dead but manage to retrieve their research. Soon, they encounter the deadly white spikes, agile creatures with whip-like tails. As they flee, Dan and his team successfully kill some white spikes. However, Cowan falls through a tunnel, prompting Dan to try and save him. With the white spikes closing in, Nora and Cowan decide to stay behind and hold them off. Just as the military drops the bombs on the tunnel, Nora, Cowan, and the white spikes meet their demise. The surviving draftees find themselves at a camp in the Dominican Republic. Dan reunites with the colonel, who turns out to be his adult daughter, Murray. There is a sense of estrangement between them as Murray holds resentment towards Dan for going through with the draft. She informs him that her team has located a female white spike whose unique physiology could be the key to defeating the rest of the alien hive. The team locates the cave where the female white spike is kept, but they are suddenly ambushed by numerous male white spikes. Some of the creatures are shredded by helicopter blades while the soldiers fight them off. Eventually, they successfully capture the female White Spike, although Dan almost jeopardizes the mission in an attempt to save Murray. She reprimands him and reveals that he died in a car accident 7 years after the draft, and she witnessed his final moments. Murray's estrangement towards Dan stems from his disillusionment after returning from the draft and leaving his family. Bringing the female White Spike to an oil rig with a jump link, the team plans to extract a toxin from her blood that can eradicate all the White Spikes. However, the base is overrun by a larger number of aliens, leading to a fierce battle.
8 minutes to jump. Sir, we're entering the engine room.
As the time in the jump link is about to expire, the female White Spike breaks free. In the chaos, she attacks, causing a bridge to collapse with Murray on it. Despite Dan's attempts to save her, Murray chooses to let go, sacrificing herself along with the female White Spike. Dan and the surviving draftees return to their present year. After returning from the future, Dan is filled with desperation to find a way back and save Murray. However, his attempts prove futile as the jump link is offline, rendering the return jump impossible. He clings to the toxin, having successfully kept it from being taken away. Back home, Dan shares his experiences with Emmy and informs her about his encounter with Murray as an adult, working together in the future. Emmy speculates that the alien invasion might not have started in 2048 as believed, but that the aliens could have existed on Earth long before. In search of answers, Dan visits a bar and reunites with Dorian, who reveals that he has terminal cancer. Dan inquires about a White Spike claw that Dorian kept as a memento, and they discover traces of ash on it, indicating its origin in Russia. Curious about volcanic ash, Dan discusses the topic with one of his students. Together, they deduce that the White Spikes have been present on Earth all along and were awakened by global warming. Dan, Charlie, and Dorian seek assistance from a government official to authorize a mission to Russia, but their request is denied. As a last resort, Dan turns to his father James for help.
Yeah, we made as much.
Together with the other soldiers, they manage to reach Russia and locate the frozen White Spike site. Surprisingly, they discover that the ship carrying the aliens was not intended for Earth, but rather transporting the White Spikes to exterminate other planets. They proceed to administer the toxin to the White Spikes, but the creatures awaken and launch a fierce attack. In a courageous act, Dorian sacrifices himself by detonating a bomb to eliminate the White Spikes. However, the female White Spike remains alive and targets Dan and James. Despite her resistance, they manage to force the toxin into her throat, causing her to plummet off a cliff and meet her demise, effectively eradicating all the White Spikes. News of the prevented war spreads, with the government official taking credit for Dan and his companion's successful mission. Dan is reunited with Emmy and Murray, introducing Murray to James, his father, as they come together once again. And the movie ended. Thank you for watching this movie recap. I hope it gave you a comprehensive overview of the story. If you found this recap useful, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up and sharing your thoughts in the comments section. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more recaps and exciting content. Your feedback motivates us to continue producing informative videos like this. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in our future recaps.